whenever I'm having a consultation with someone about their reactive dog, one of the questions that I will ask is how much off-lead time does your dog get? And of course, often than not, the answer is none. And that's just people being a responsible owner. They have a reactive dog that can go running up to any dog, especially if they don't have very good recall, and it can pose a safety concern when out and about. So by not wanting to have this safety concern, we keep our dogs on lead for their safety, for others' safety, and for our peace of mind. Now, the question that follows that is, how important is it to you that your dog has off-lead time and a decent recall? Now, that question is then most typically followed by, I'm not really that fazed by my dog being off lead. I don't need them to have a good recall. I just want them to stop reacting to the dogs, the cars, the bikes, the people. And I'm going to let you in on one of my biggest secrets of my consultation calls and the questions I ask. That question is a loaded question. It is a trick question because it basically allows me to get into what I'm going to get into today, which is why off-lead freedom and recall for your dog is one of the most important aspects of your reactivity training. Now, it comes down to the neuroscience of your dog. How is our dog feeling during the time of reactivity? What happened a few seconds or even a second before the reaction occurred? And what is happening in their brain? What hormone changes are happening? What endorphins are going through that make our dog's body react that way? And how can we, as their owner, help their brain create a different action in their body to stop this reactivity? Now, this is where we're going to get quite scientific, so do stay with me. Grab yourselves a cup of tea, maybe a chocolate biscuit, because you're going to need it. And if you need to, you can rewatch this video again and again and again and again and again, as many times as you like, until you get to the point where you're really starting to understand what's going on in your dog's brain during that point of reactivity and even before that point. So we're going to start off with the point of reactivity. So this little red dot here is going to basically show our dog's reaction to a trigger. And this trigger could be, over here. It can be a dog, a person, a cat, a horse, a sheep, a bus, a car, a truck, even a wheelie bin. I don't know, wherever your dog's trigger is, this is it up here. And this is the reaction, okay? Now, I want you to imagine their reactivity and the way that their brain and body is working a bit like a target board, okay? Now, quite often when we're talking about dog behavior and how to rehabilitate it, how to change it, we're focusing on this one behavior, this triggered behavior, in this case, reactivity. And we're trying to find ways of changing that behavior through desensitization, through different associations to get a different behavior here. But unfortunately, the thing that can be missed a lot is all of the other aspects of this behavior that's happening in the brain, in the muscles, in the environment, the stimulation our dog's feeling, how we're doing. We can look at previous experiences of our dog as well. And we have to actually put all of this together to change this behavior. So the first one we're going to start with is actually the thing that's most closest to our dog's reaction. So what is happening in that moment? And this is where we are looking at what's going on in their brain, their hormones, those chemical reactions, the sparks in the neurotransmitters. What is happening in that moment? Now, this moment here is typically a moment of high stress. Therefore, we can understand that there's a high level of cortisol that is going to be flooding our dog's brain. That is the stress hormone, okay? And it's in this moment here and in this area of our dog's body where their neurotransmitters are actually firing all of these signals to each other to allow our dog an action. And this is most typically from an outside stimulus. So I'll put it in terms of people. So summer, right? Love summer. I could be relaxing and I could be in my garden and suddenly, there's not much going on in my brain. We're in the no talk zone, we're just chilling. There's obviously sparks going on and firing, but there's not anything that is sending signals to my muscles to go, get up now, okay, do this now. However, I then hear the ice cream truck, that lovely little jingle that we all know really, really well, and my brain has an association of that jingle to getting ice cream. Now, I get very excited by ice cream in the summer. Now, at that point, there is a reaction going on in my brain. My neurotransmitters are firing and they're sending messages to each other, and everything is getting really exciting in my brain. Now, this is where my brain can start sending signals to my body to move my muscles, to feel a certain way, to release a certain hormone that is going to make me react in a certain way. And in that case, it's get up, shout, scream, search frantically for any change that I have, and get outside the front door as quickly as I can. So that is my human reaction to an outside stimulus based on the association my brain has made and the hormones that it is releasing to create that reaction, okay? Now, if we then zone out a bit more, look at the bigger picture a bit more, okay? So this is where we're going to have this circle here. And this is where we need to look at what happened a second before this reaction happened, okay? What happened in the environment? Is it something that we done? And this is where our triggers come into play. So if we've got a dog that is reactive to dogs, a second before their outburst, their reaction to that dog, what happened? Did the dog get one step closer to our dog? Did they give them a funny look? Is it a certain type of dog? Did the dog bark at them? This is what we need to look at and focus on. Yes, the dog is the trigger to my dog, but what is it that that other dog actually did? Did it startle my dog? Did it come around the corner too quickly? Okay. So this is where we start looking at the environmental factors that create this chemical reaction in our dog's brain, releasing a reaction, which is our red dot. Now, I want you to broaden that picture even more, okay? So we're going to add another circle to our target board. And this is basically going to be the past. So we need to look at our dog's past. What started making all of these things happen? When did our dog create an association to a trigger to this happening in their brain? Now, this is where we see a dog's been attacked by another dog. Maybe it's been a bad daycare experience. Maybe they were under-socialized as a puppy. And in quite a lot of the cases that I see, it's dogs that have been in rescue. And rescue, it's not something I want to get into now, but rescue dogs, they are quite prone to reactivity because of the environment that they have been put into. So I'm going to use Bonnie as a case study for this target board. Okay, so her dot was barking, screaming, lunging, biting me. That was her reaction. That's her red dot. Okay, now what happened in her brain before that red dot was she suddenly got a massive flow, a wave of cortisol, stress hormone. So she becomes stressed. She starts to feel anxious. Maybe she starts to feel a bit fearful. And all of the neurotransmitters in her brain start firing off all of these signals to each other, which then sends a message to her body to say, I want you to do this to make yourself feel better. Okay? Now, her environmental factor was the fact that there was a dog half a mile away, and it was the sight of another dog. So it wasn't anything that the dog was particularly doing, it was the sight of an unknown presence that she didn't like. Dog, person, car, anything that was unknown to her caused this reaction in her brain. Now, if we look at her past, now this is where it gets a bit tricky with rescue dogs, is quite a lot of the time we don't know their past. With Bonnie, all I was given was that she was a family pet, and when I took her to the vet the day after I got her, he hypothesized that she had been kept in a crate for the majority of the day each day due to her muscle wastage and the weight on her. So her reactivity we could potentially put down to lack of socialization and lack of exposure, which for her would mean that we need to work on her resilience, her exposure, and how she copes with stressful situations. So we need to change her environment for her to learn how to deal with these chemical changes, these hormone reactions that are going on in her brain to stop this reaction happening. And what is the best way to do that is actually to have another type of chemical reaction, hormone, going on in the brain that makes our dogs feel better about stressful situations. Now, you can do this through desensitization. We can put our dog, or habituation, we can put our dog in that stressful situation and wait it out, desensitize them to it for them to eventually go, actually, this isn't that bad. We can change their association to it. So she sees a dog, I give her food. She sees a dog, I give her food. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for all dogs, especially when they are in the red zone. They are tunnel visioned. They no longer want the food. They no longer want the toy. They no longer want you. So we have to find another way to work it. And this is where changing the chemical reaction in the brain can help us. And what is the best way to change that? You guessed it, it's by having your dog off lead. Now, when we talk about our dogs being off lead, we're talking about exercise. And one of your questions might be, okay, but Abby, can't my dog get that exercise whilst they're on a lead with me and they're walking with me? How about if they're on a flexi lead or a long line? And the answer is, yeah, but when you're dealing with a reactive dog, unfortunately, most of the time, it's not enough. Especially when you have a working breed, like a lab, like a German Shepherd. Even your Romanian rescues, most of the time, have some form of working breed in them. Now, our dogs typically can move twice as fast as we can. So if you're walking at 4 miles an hour, your dog can go at 8 miles an hour, for example. And our dogs as well will cover 4 times the area that we can in the same period. And that to them is great stimulation, great brain activity, great exercise. So if our dog is confined to a lead, they're not getting that. They're not getting the speed, they're not getting the endurance, and they're not getting the stimulation from the environment as much as they could. So what happens in our dog's brain when they're off lead that can help their reactivity? Well, if you yourself have ever exercised, I want you to think about the feeling that you have had afterwards. How good have you felt? Now, if we think about people that run long distance, endurance running, typically we'll hear of the runner's high. Now, this runner's high, people have said that it reduces any pain in them. They're suddenly not as anxious as they used to be. Their mood swings are less. They're happier. They're not as fatigued. And the reason for this is because during that moment of exercise, that endurance exercise, our body creates endocannabinoids. I don't know if I've spelled it correctly, but I'm not going to look it up right now. We know how to say it. That's all we need. Okay. And what endocannabinoids are is a reaction in the brain that makes us feel good. Now, there have been many studies on humans, on animals, that show the effects of these endocannabinoids when we exercise, when we do endurance exercise. And it has been shown to significantly reduce anxiety, reduce fear, reduce mood swings, reduce fatigue, and generally make us feel better, make us feel good. So how can we relate that to our reactive dog? Well, if we've got a dog who's being reactive and we introduce some endocannabinoids to their brain, to their day, we start reducing their fear. We start reducing their mood swings. We start making them feel better. We start making them feel more confident about things that are going on in their environment. And therefore, this reduces their reactivity. So I want you to think of these endocannabinoids and your dog's exercise off lead as the first fixed leaky pipe in a sequence of leaky pipes. Now you might ask, how do we know this about dogs? Well, as I say, these studies have been done on many different animals, humans included, and it has shown the difference between animals, mammals built for endurance and ones not. So if we look at the difference between humans, for example, or even mice, rats built for endurance, and a ferret who is not built for endurance, we can see that endocannabinoids are more present in the animals that are made for endurance when we give them endurance exercises to do than they are in animals that aren't made for it. So if we give a rat and a ferret the same endurance exercise, in the rat, endocannabinoids will be really present, whereas in the ferret, they won't be. Again, how does this relate to our dogs? Well, if we've got a dog, as I say, like a working breed, that is built for endurance, is built for stamina, built to be out for quite a while exercising, then we will see quite a lot of these present. If we have a dog that is built for stamina, built for endurance and long phases of exercise, and we don't allow them the ability to do that, we're not going to see these endocannabinoids, and therefore our dog is going to start feeling more fearful, more anxious. And this is what can lead to reactivity. So when I ask you, how important is it for your dog to have off lead time with a good recall, and you say to me, it's not that important, I want you to think about what's happening in your dog's brain. What is your dog feeling when they're not allowed to go and run and be free? And I can guarantee you that when you start thinking about that, you will entirely change your mind about how important and a priority it is to have your dog having off-lead freedom. I hope that all makes sense. If you'd like to know more of these weird, interesting facts about your dog, then make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and I'll see you on the next crazy, quirky video about things that you probably didn't know about your dog.